Hello my friends, I hope you're having a lovely day, and in today's video we're doing something I don't usually do. I, Outside of reviews and previews, I tend to stay away from opinion features because I'm always like, who the hell cares about my opinion, and what right do I have to be like, I think things should be like this. But I've been thinking about this topic a lot and I wanted to talk about it. Hopefully you know I'm not saying my opinion is the way things should be. And I'm not saying my opinion is more valid than anybody else's, but it's a topic I wanted to discuss because I kept thinking of it while playing Immortals Fenyx Rising. I'm still playing it. I need more time. I don't know how these other critics play through games so fast, but I am playing through it. But there's one thing I've noticed, and it's the humor in the game, and I really want to talk about it. Obviously, the content in TV shows, movies, and games is all subjective, but I think comedy might be the most subjective of them all. It's just so hard to nail comedy because there's so many different types of strains within comedy. What one man might find funny might not be funny at all to other people. Like, for example, I can like straightforward comedies, certainly, and I really find stuff like Tim and Eric funny, and there are people who absolutely despise Tim and Eric. And I get it. That humor is not for everyone. And if you're going for mainstream humor or something that a mainstream audience would appreciate, you're obviously not going to go for a Tim and Eric style approach. That's more of a niche thing. You have your sitcoms nowadays that aim at a big, wide audience, and there's a lot of people who would say they aren't funny, but obviously some of them do well in the ratings, so that humor clicks with people. And with Immortals Fenyx Rising, the development team decided to take a humorous approach to the story, which is not something you would expect based on just looking at the game. If you didn't see any of the cutscenes or hear any of the dialogue, you wouldn't expect it to be a humorous game. You'd think it'd follow, gods and their mythology and all that stuff and just tell it in a different sort of way for the gameplay. But no, it takes or what I should say is it tries to take a very humorous approach to gameplay, to storytelling. And the team involved with the game said that they were inspired by great comedy movies like Airplane and Naked Gun. And that's a very specific type of comedy movie. Certainly Airplane is highly regarded as one of the best comedies as far as films go. I don't know if Hot Shots is. I personally would include it in my list of top comedies because I love that kind of comedy. But then on the flip side, we don't really see comedies like that anymore. So they were saying they were inspired by those because they wanted to bring that kind of vibe to the game. And while I may not think the game called for a comedic approach, I can appreciate the team's interest and desire to do something like that. Because we don't really see that style of approach too often in any medium. And nailing humor in anything is hard, like I said. But in games, I feel like it's even harder because more often than not, you just have the people who are writing games rather than comedic writers coming onto the staff to help out. So I don't know all the people that worked on Immortals Fenyx Rising when it came to writing the story, specifically jokes and humor and all that, but I do applaud the willingness to go for something like that. Now, unfortunately, I didn't find the game funny at all. The thing about comedy with me is, and many other people might be like this, when it hits really good, and when it misses, it's groan-inducing, and it really sucks the life out of an experience. And I can appreciate the gameplay of Immortals Fenyx Rising, as has been discussed ad nauseum. The gameplay is very much inspired by Breath of the Wild. So if you like the gameplay of Breath of the Wild, you most likely like the gameplay of Immortals Fenyx Rising, because they share a lot of similar DNA. And Breath of the Wild might have a few humorous moments, but Immortals Fenyx Rising is going all out on comedy. And anytime the dialogue scenes came up, or story scenes, or cutscenes, whatever you want to call them, whenever they popped up, they always tried to interject some humor. And I just found it to be so bad. And I had actually read about the desire to mimic movies like Airplane in this game before I was playing the game. So I was excited for that. I'm like, oh, I love those movies. So maybe my expectations were set too high, but what I'm getting in Immortals Fenyx Rising doesn't match that at all, and not even in tone. If they were going for a similar tone and they missed the mark, I could be like, well, they had the right idea, they just didn't connect with the humor. But what I'm getting overall is just not it's not funny to me. It's really not funny. And unfortunately, it kind of sours the experience for me. I can still enjoy the gameplay and I can still have fun doing all that, but I kind of dread when the next cutscene is coming up, but I don't want to skip it because I may learn something that I need to do about what mission I'm going on next. So I feel bad skipping it, and I want to give the game a chance, so I watch the cutscenes and listen to the dialogue, and I'm like, man, this is just so off the mark. It's disappointing because, as I said, I really do appreciate the willingness to try and go for comedy. That is a bold choice, without a doubt. But what's here really isn't doing it for me, and it's making it a worse experience for me. Now, I've read what some of my fellow critics have said about Immortals Fenyx Rising, and the vast majority have said that they found the game funny. And I was surprised because when I was playing the game and I knew reviews were coming out, I was like, I imagine the game's going to take a beating when it comes to the writing. And it didn't. There's a few reviews here and there, but by and large, the game takes a beating for being too much like Breath of the Wild. It's a whole different subject to discuss. But when it came to the writing, people were really into it and really liked the comedy and found it funny, like we're actually laughing at it. And I'm not saying they're wrong. Not at all. I'm happy that they enjoyed the comedy. It shows that Ubisoft did something that connects with an audience. It's just, for me, it isn't there. So I'm left wondering, boy, what am I missing? Am I being too harsh? Is it just not my kind of comedy? Because as I said, it's so not funny to me that it kind of makes the experience less enjoyable overall. Maybe it's because I take comedy so dearly. Like, I love to laugh and I love comedies, and I'm always looking for the next movie or TV show to make me laugh. So maybe I was super excited for the comedy in this game and it just wasn't there for me, so it left me more disappointed. I don't know, but it leaves me wondering how you approach comedy in a game, both from a developer standpoint and a critic standpoint. I don't feel like I should knock the game because I didn't find it funny, especially because others are finding it funny. And like I said, humor is subjective. There are so many other things that are subjective in any review. So I can say, I shouldn't say the humor is bad in Immortals Fenyx Rising. I should say the humor wasn't funny to me, but maybe it will be your cup of tea, which could very well be the case, but I'm still left wondering, how does that factor into the review? Because for me, it takes away from the game, whereas others, the humor might add to it. So I don't know. It's really interesting to think about. And comedy in games in general is not something that we see often. And when you look at a big name publisher like Ubisoft, you don't expect them to go out and do things that you don't usually see in games. And there are comedic games, but they are few and far between. So I think recognizing the risk of going for a comedic storyline is important because I don't think big name publishers take risks. And surely they're taking it very safe in terms of gameplay by mimicking what Breath of the Wild did. But in terms of story, they're certainly doing something we don't often see. So I can applaud that. So I think overall, I guess comedy in this game is something I can appreciate in the sense that they did it. They had inspirations that I like, and they went for it. Like, they went all out on it. That is the tone of the game. So they wanted a comedy, and that's what they did. It just unfortunately misses the mark for me by a lot, and it impacts my overall enjoyment. I just need to separate those two things. But it is interesting to see them take a comedic approach. It's not something I thought would happen with this game. I don't even know what this video is, but I just wanted to share those thoughts with you because it's something I've been dying to talk about, and now that the embargo is up, I can talk about it. And there are things I haven't seen in the game yet, so maybe some humorous moments will pop up, but everything that I've seen so far, and I'm not trying to be a jerk, and I'm not trying to be rude or mean, but everything I've seen so far has not been funny to me. Maybe there's a couple moments where I blow a little bit harder out my nose than I usually would from regular breathing, but nothing that I would be like, man, that was really funny. But again, comedy is so few and far between in games that I think it's worth discussing this. I think comedy in games altogether is worth discussing because it's such a rare thing, and it's even rarer to nail it. There are games out there that are funny. Well, like I said, maybe people will find this game funny, but there are games out there, I should say, that approach stories in a humorous way, although you don't see them often. So it's a scary direction for developers and content creators across all mediums, because it's just there's so many different ways you can go and so many different approaches you can take, and you might completely miss the mark, which is what happened with me here. But yeah, if you're gonna play the game, let me know how you feel about the humorous approach to the story. If you've played the demo, let me know if you find any of it humorous. If you play the game and you watch this video afterwards, let me know what you thought of the humor. I want to know if you found it funny, and how funny you found it overall compared to, I don't know, other funny games or funny movies, TV shows, whatever it may be. I'm really curious to hear it. Alright, my friends, that's today's video. Thanks for watching, liking, subscribing, and commenting. It's very much appreciated. Also, a big thank you to those of you who support me on Patreon. It helps me do videos like this, helps out with the site, the podcast, social media, all that good stuff. If you'd like to learn more about the Patreon, which is just $1, you can click the link in the description below. But as for today, that's it. I'll be back tomorrow with something. So until then, have a lovely day and a lovely evening, and I'll see you in a few short hours.